as a hostage negotiator, I was also a crisis negotiator, which meant that I dealt with a lot of people who were suicidal. And I was that negotiator, that first responder that gave them this, that these hopes that they could latch on to and say, I'm not alone, because you're never alone. You're never, ever alone.
Welcome to Create Up with Will Ennis. That's me. This is a podcast on leveling up both creatively and in life. My guest today is Paul Nadeau, and he's got a really, truly remarkable story. I'll tell you that. Paul grew up under circumstances that could have easily left him down and out, and he managed to heal and thrive. And even more importantly, he managed to help others do the same. So he's here today to share many different insights from different parts of his life. And he just has this wide variety of life experiences that I find very interesting. He was a hostage negotiator. He was a peacekeeper in Iraq. And he's also a best-selling author with his book, Take Control of Your Life, Rescue Yourself, and Live the Life You Deserve. But that's really the tip of the iceberg. Paul is a creative force, and he's always looking to sort of shape his life in a different way. For example, we met on an acting set. He was an actor, so he's not just a writer. He also has a podcast. It goes on and on. He's just a very creative dude and one who gives back to others. So it's going to be a great conversation. It was an honor to speak with him, and I'm happy to bring this conversation to you. Enjoy. Paul Nadeau, thank you so much for being here, man.
Will, thank you so much for having me. I think it was about 45 years ago that you and I worked on a film together. So it's nice. It's nice to see your face after all this time. You haven't aged today.
Thank you. My records say 47 years, but we'll just leave that. We'll leave that as it is.
Alzheimer's, eh?
yeah. It's quite a thing. So yeah, we had to talk for a number of years, and I came across your TED Talk online, and I was blown away because we only worked for a very short period of time together. I knew a bit about you. I sort of thought, from what I gathered, you had a background as a police officer, but this TED Talk blew my mind because there was so much more to you, from a hostage negotiator, an investigative detective, a peacekeeper in Iraq, training the Iraqi police force into self-help and being a public speaker and just people living better lives. And I was like, is this the same Paul that I know from way back when?
Yes, it is. And, those are only a few of the things that I like to immerse myself in, because I believe that when we put our minds to something and we have a vision and we take action to make that vision come true, we are pretty much limitless, Will. And I try my hand at so many different things, from acting to writing to peacekeeping to whatever. And I'm just getting started, brother. I'm just getting started.
That's awesome. That's an awesome outlook. It's, not thinking about what you've done before defining you. It's where every day we wake up new, you know what I mean? So it's like, what do we want to be curious about? What do we want to be excited by? And you're someone who's definitely followed all of his passions. I'm just wondering, where does it all start for you? What makes you that way? Like, what made Paul?
Well, I was raised by my family, great family, except my father was a very violent alcoholic who used to beat my brother, my mother, and myself. I was abused as a kid. And for the longest time as a child, I did not believe in myself. I had imagined that I would amount to nothing, because I had been told that by my teachers, for one, and other people. And you know how you kind of internalize how people treat you and what they say about you. We tend to create these patterns in our minds, and that pattern becomes a belief. And unless that belief is challenged, it can stay with us forever. So as this abused kid, and I won't go into the levels of abuse that I experienced at the hands of my father, who was demented, and he was troubled, very, very troubled, broken man.
Sure.
But one experience, Will, in grade 7, kind of pivoted for me. it pivoted the way I thought of myself. And I'll tell you what it was. So I had been conditioned not to believe in myself, not to work at trying anything out. I didn't know how to study. I was being picked on. I was being bullied. My teachers were telling me that I wasn't going to amount to anything. You know, they were pushing me from grade to grade because they didn't want to deal with me in the next grade. But in grade 7, here I am, starting to like girls. And one teacher in particular, I don't know whether he did this on purpose or because he just didn't like me. At first I thought it was because he hated my guts. Later on in life, I kind of thought, well, maybe he did a little bit of tough love. And this is what he did. We were in class and he announces to the entire class, he says, next week, we're going to have a test and I expect everyone to pass except for you, Nadeau. I already know you're going to fail.
Oh my God.
Those words, Will, they hit me with such impact that I felt humiliated. I felt that I was falling apart. I went back home. Well, my classmates were all laughing. I went back home and I cried all weekend. And I did something that I had never done before. I actually opened my books and tried to study without knowing how to study. But I tried to cram as much as I could into this little, I think it was 13 years old or whatever in grade 7. But I tried to study as much as I could. I wrote that test the next week. And as was customary in this teacher's class, is that he would call the student with the lowest grade to the front of the classroom to pick up their paper. It was the walk of shame. And guess who was conditioned? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. In front of the entire classroom, he would call out 47 out of 100. And I would get out of my chair because I was conditioned to do that. I was that dog that had been conditioned. Every time you ring the bell, every time something bad happens, it's going to be me. Mm-hmm. And so on this occasion, when he started to call out the grades, I wasn't the first and I wasn't the second. I had these competing voices in my head. On the one side, those voices were saying, you know what? You knew this material, Paul. I think you passed. On the other side, we all know those voices. It was that, oh, no. He's just waiting for the very end so he can ridicule you even more. And so I waited, and halfway through the class, my classmates are looking at me and they're giving me, what? You're not up there? And I'm thinking, no. And again, these competing voices. 3 students were left to be called. My cousin Lise, her friend Giselle, and me. And Lise and Giselle were what we called the Browners. They always wanted to get the highest marks in class. They were competing all the time. My cousin Lise was called next. I was the second last student to be called to pick up my paper.
Holy.
I walked the walk of pride that day. Mm-hmm. And when I collected my paper, I must have had a smile on me that reached, from ear to ear. And I realized for the first time in my life that if I applied myself and changed that negative way of thinking, I would amount to something. And so with that epiphany in grade 7, I started to apply myself. That way I went on to doing some pretty remarkable things because I believed I could, and I still believe I can. And that's what I tell myself. I can.
That's amazing. I'm curious, did the teacher say anything to you after that? Did he make any comments about the grade?
No, he did not. He just looked at me, smiled when he gave me the paper, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that meaning, like someone's meaning in their life, is the most powerful meanings? Do you think they're shaped by negative experiences generally? When someone does something positive and amazing or has a big transformation, do you think it comes generally out of a pain, or is that just for some?
I think that's for a number of people. The old saying comes to mind: hurt people hurt people, and healed people heal people. Mm-hmm. So when we develop these beliefs in ourselves to bring ourselves to a new level and to really take charge and take control of our lives, then our experiences can just blow right up. It's just amazing how many things you can reach. And I do believe that a lot of people who have gone through pain and suffering look at it as though they've gone through it. Hey, that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I like to look at that and say, that happened for me as well. Because when I look back at the abuse that I suffered at the hands of my father, after a beating when I was 7 years old, and the number 7 plays a huge role in my life, but the number 7, when I was 7 years old, I remember looking up at my dad and saying to myself in my little brain, when I grow up, I'm going to become a policeman so I can arrest people like you. Mm. And he never gave me the chance to arrest him. He killed himself when I was 17. Oh
my God.
And I joined the police department at the age of 21, and 7 years later, I became a detective. And so I looked at that experience as having both happened to me, but also happened for me. And when I look at some of the adversities and setbacks in my life that I was challenged with, I also look at them and say, aha, had that not happened, this incredible opportunity would not have happened, or I wouldn't have learned this valuable lesson. Mm-hmm. So I challenge people to look into the things that may still be hurting them and keeping them hostages to themselves, to that little way of thinking is like, oh, poor me, I was traumatized, I was victimized. If you stay in that pool, that cesspool for too long, you might like it there. That attention, you know, oh, I'm getting attention because poor me, I was abused as a child. So, hey, you're looking at me, you're validating me. No. You're greater than your circumstances. Your circumstances don't define you. You define your circumstances.
That's amazing. So when these situations happen to you and you decided to make the most positive use of it, was there a mentor that helped you along the way, or do you think it was just an internal decision from the pain? I'm just curious. I'm still just a little bit curious.
Yeah, and you know what, Will? That's a fantastic question. That's one I don't think I've been asked before. No, I think I have. And the answer that I gave and that I'm giving you is that no. I pretty much kind of absorbed the behaviors of other people. And, you know, I was raised in the early 60s. I mean, like the early 60s. And I started my first job in the 60s. And at the age of 14, my father sent me out to look for work. But I'd learned how to become a good salesman from my mother when I was very, very young, because she was a good salesperson. And so I just I would look and I would say, okay, well, this behavior is not worth emulating. I'm not going to be my dad. That man seems to treat his kids nice, you know, and this person. And when I started to work, I watched adults and how they interacted. So all that kind of came into me. By whatever grace you want to call it, it really stuck with me, and I started to develop my own self. And then I would get into reading material that was positive, or watching, or at the time it was cassette tapes, you know, that I would listen to, some motivational speaker that would fill me with good stuff so that I would bring good stuff out. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, the idea of mirroring the behavior and absorbing other people's behavior, and then just books and different things like that. So the first career you took on was detective. And how long were you a detective for? And is this the same career that led into hostage negotiation? Did those two careers overlap?
Yes. What happened was, at the age of 21, I joined a police department, and I was a constable. And I was a constable for 7 years. And in that, I would do the road work. We see them in cruisers, and they respond. They're call responders. So they respond and they stop people for traffic violations or impaired drivers or look for insecure properties, the things that a uniformed police officer would do. Yep. And I had already by then developed a great ability to communicate with people because of the things that I was forced to do at a young age. I was forced to do some sales. I was forced to sell myself. What I mean by that is get a job at the age of 14 so that I could pay my father room and board. And so I learned how to communicate with adults. I get this. Here I am at the age of 16 with hair down to my shoulders, and I am hired by a medical clinic to deliver drugs. So they would give me these drugs to deliver, prescription drugs to deliver, you know. And so at the age of 16, I was able to get that kind of job. And at the age of 18,
with long hair, no less, too. In the 60s, they think you're a hippie. They think you're a stoner. Da 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 da.
I had my psychedelic shirts on, Will. Like I had my psychedelic shirts on, and I was just rocking it, buddy. I was rocking it, and little mustache going on, and yeah, you're right. So how I got that job was because of how I presented myself to them, and you make a connection. People get to know you, like you, and trust you in a very short period of time if you know how to do it. And I knew how to do it. At the age of 18, I was 18 and a half, 19 years old. I was actually a call taker on a suicide prevention line.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was from all the experiences and the studying and the training that I was doing into my personal wellness and personal growth.
What would be something you would say to someone if they were feeling suicidal? If someone came to you now as Paul, is there something you could, or anyone listening, if there was something that you could say, if you could get out a couple of lines, like what would be something you would say?
One of the things that we must remind people is that the taking of your own life is a permanent decision for a temporary solution. You cannot come back tomorrow and change your mind. And what you are experiencing now is not going to be your reality in a period of time. You've had many incidents that have happened in your past, and there is help out there. There are people who can support you. There are counselors and therapists out there, and your life means something. You mean something. You can bring something to this world, and you will find love. You will be loved. It's all that supportive kind of, I hear you, I see you, and you're worth it. And let me help you to get to where you want to go. But do not entertain the thought of taking your own life, because understand this, Will, that a lot of people who are suffering depression and are thinking of taking their lives are not thinking of killing themselves per se. That is the means. All they want is for the pain to stop. It's not that they want to take their life. They just don't want to feel the pain. When they wake up, all their thoughts and their pasts, they begin to blame and shame themselves. They begin to, that hopeless feeling is like, I can't take it anymore. I just want it to stop. How do I get it to stop? I do this. Yeah. And I have to remind them, because as a hostage negotiator, I was also a crisis negotiator, which meant that I dealt with a lot of people who were suicidal. And I was that negotiator, that first responder that gave them this, that these hopes that they could latch on to and say, I'm not alone, because you're never alone. You're never, ever alone.
Absolutely. I mean, and yeah, if you were a hostage negotiator, I would think you're dealing with some of the most desperate people when they're taking someone hostage, generally speaking. How many from the hostage negotiation side? And by the way, I actually want to say that was beautiful what you said about suicide, and I totally agree with you. I remember in my early 20s, I had a lot of depression and was considering suicide at times because there was so much pain. For me, I just found I would hold on for months and months. And then after a couple months, I know my life was different. So I always got curious, well, what will my life look like in 3 months if I stay around? What about another 3 months? And then I'd look back and go, whoa, like now I'm in a new city, or now I'm here. And I mean, I don't really know what I would say to anyone who's there now with those kind of feelings. But my thing was always, when you hold on and you wake up more days on the planet, you kind of learn how to deal with it. Hopefully. I mean, at least in my experience. And I don't know. You just never really know what's around the corner. I really think there's optimism in just staying put. I don't know.
I was going to just add to that, Will, because you're absolutely right. Kind of look at the long range, and I think that may be a mistake of looking at the long range, at the things that are not within our control. We can make plans and envision where we want to be. And that is fantastic, and that's what we should do. As human beings, we have 3 personal time zones. And what I mean by that is that we have the past, the present, and the future. Let's take the past. What happened 5 minutes ago, I cannot change. What happened 15 years ago, I cannot change. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, can't change it. Why then should I revisit those times that were painful and hurtful and sit with that time and say, ha, I am such a victim. And that does not serve me to where I am today. That only serves to keep me a hostage to my past. And I don't want to be a hostage to my past. When I started thinking about how to really help people, as a hostage negotiator, I did this. I went to a hostage crisis. I recognized that the hostage taker was in complete control of his victims, that his victims could not move or say anything without his permission, that he could take their life, that he could hurt them, do whatever. So the hostage taker is in complete control. When I started working with victims of crime and thinking as myself, the things that I thought to myself as a young boy and how I released myself from those thoughts, I imagined, aren't we our own hostage negotiators? Can we not negotiate and say, enough is enough? If I put you in this cage where you're feeling bad, because nobody can make you feel bad unless you give them permission. If I put myself in that cage, can I not release myself? Of course I can. I can tell myself that I don't deserve to be in this state of sorrow or in this past experience, that I am better, that I can move on. So our past is our past. Our future, on the other hand, it's not yet been written. So it is a blank canvas. Why not open the page, be the director of your own life, and write the most amazing script for your life? Just write something beautiful, envision it, believe it, and manifest it.
Absolutely.
And you can make plans. Oh, make plans. I'm going on holiday. I'm going here. I'm going there. But as COVID-19 has reminded us, no, you're not. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. Make those plans, but guess what? Yeah, you might have to change them at the last minute. Yeah. That's okay. I'm still going to make those plans. I get to write my script. I get to write myself as the hero of my own story. I get to choose, and I love the word choice, a 6-letter word. I get to choose how I feel, what I plan for, what I manifest. And so that is the future. The past is the past, future not yet written, but it will be written by you. You choose which direction it goes. You're the director after all. What does that leave us? Leaves us with this present, this gift present. In this moment, you get to choose how you feel, what you say, how you interact, how you love. This moment with you, Will, is the most important moment of my life. It really is, because in this moment, I am with you. I get to share, and I get to chat with you and listen to you and have fun and you know, have this great conversation after all those 40 years.
Yeah.
Those are our personal time zones that are really important. And I want to go back to one thing that you asked. You asked about my career being a police officer. Yes, in that career, when I first started at the age of 21, I applied myself. And after 7 years, I asked to join the detective office. I joined the detective office because I worked hard at it and I was really good at what I did. And after getting into the detective office, I ended up working in the special victims unit, working with victims of crime who had been molested and raped and sexual assault and child abuse. And then an opportunity arose to become a hostage negotiator. And I went, that's a really cool job, hostage negotiator. And so I applied for it. I went through a battery of tests with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and they said, yes, he can be a hostage negotiator. I became a hostage negotiator. When the Iraq War after 9/11 was going on, there was an opportunity to become a peacekeeper and fight terrorism. And I thought, now there's something I can do to help fight against terrorism. So I applied for it, went to the Middle East. And it's just been that kind of thing. Opportunities come to each and every one of us, Will. Opportunities always come. We just have to be open to them, have our eyes open. And if they're not there, create them. because we are the masters of our own lives, and we can really take charge and say, that's what I want. That's what I want. And that's what I'm going to get.
Wow. That's amazing. What qualities make someone a good peacekeeper, a good hostage negotiator, someone that can deal with desperate people, someone that can keep their wits about them? Like, what are some of the qualities? Like, if the RCMP was testing you to see if he's good for it, or from you, just your own personal experience in the gig.
Here it is. Be in control of your own emotions, your own self. Know thyself. Really know thyself, and work on yourself. The very first person you have to negotiate with in anything, be it a business negotiation, be it a life negotiation, be it a hostage negotiation, the first person that you negotiate with is you. Am I ready for this? Am I prepared for this? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So you negotiate with yourself first. Two of the greatest lessons I learned as a young police officer that I've carried with me throughout my career to this day, and I keep using them, and I teach them, and I give seminars and lectures on this, is this. Number one, we are more similar than we are different. Now let's let that sink in for just one moment, folks. We are more similar than we are different. That means that that person with the different colored skin, with the different religious beliefs, with the different whatever, is more similar to you than they are different. They laugh, they love, they bleed in the same way as you do. So imagine what their life experience is, and imagine it being very close to yours. So how would you like to be treated? That brings me into my second valuable lesson. You get what you give. If I give you dignity and respect, I am likely, in 99% of the cases, likely to get it in return. If I walk down the street and give you the finger and tell you to screw off, I'm likely to get that kind of response in return. We usually mirror what people give to us. For example, at your birthday, I give you a birthday card. You go, oh, Paul, you gave me a birthday card. Isn't this nice? And then when it's my birthday, you're going to say, well, Paul gave me a birthday card. I'm going to send him a birthday card. You know, it's just this theory of reciprocity. I can't even say the word reciprocation.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, you know what? Some words I just can't say in the English language. I don't know. Maybe it's my French. Je parle français aussi. Alors, des fois, il y a des... Anyways. But this, so to answer your question, and I do take a long time to get to the answer sometimes because there's so much involved in this. When you are in the moment and you are really empathizing with a genuine interest to understand and to serve, not thinking about the outcome, what you want, but thinking about the moment. Remember I said now in this moment is the greatest moment of your life? Imagine this in a negotiation where you really listen, where you're really asking questions, not for the purpose of, oh, I want to say this. No, you're asking to understand, how can I help you? What is it that I can do for you? What are you looking to solve? And let me see if I'm a good fit to help you get there. And let me serve you so that we can work together. That's the whole idea of being a negotiator.
There's a lot there. It's very profound. I like to soak in stuff sometimes.
Absolutely. I'm the same way, man. Yeah.
You were saying for a negotiation, you first have to start negotiating with yourself. Are you ready to do this? Yes. What about those situations? Because you've been in so many dangerous situations where something surprises you, and maybe you're not ready to deal with it, but because you have that badge or you have that peacekeeping, you're a peacekeeper, you have to deal with it. You are the one that has to deal with it. Have you learned anything in your life to overcome fear?
Fear is a mindset, right? And we tend to imagine the worst outcomes for ourselves. And this is what a lot of people do when they're in a state of depression. See, depression is that little voice in your head whose job it is to take your hope and your dreams away from you and tell you can't do it. So in a situation where there is some fear involved, I recognize that I can calm my state down. I can take a couple of deep breaths and just not imagine the worst, because the outcome I cannot control. What I can control is myself in this moment and how I respond to what happens. We're meaning-making machines, Will. When something happens to us, we try to attach a meaning to it. Oh, bad guy's coming. Oh, you're going to die. Like that kind of stuff. Wait a minute. Why not take a moment, think about what's going on, and give yourself a second to respond? There's a great author, Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And you're nodding. I know that you're familiar with this book.
Yeah.
Viktor Frankl was a prisoner during the Second World War in a concentration camp, and he's made some great observations in life. One of the observations that he made, which I believe will apply to the question that you've asked, is this: between stimulus and response, there is a moment. And in that moment, we get to choose our response. And from that, I think it goes on to say is that we can create our own destiny, whatever it is. So when I'm faced with that danger, I have a moment, in most instances, to take a deep breath and to assess the situation, which I've done in many, many cases. I can tell you stories, man, because I got hundreds of them. I like the Forrest Gump I'll tell you, things have happened to me. I'm going, oh, I just did that, or I just went through that. Are you kidding? And so fear is something that I like to say that I'm almost fearless, because I understand that my primitive brain tries to keep me protected and tries to keep me from experimenting with different things or taking risks, because, oh, don't get hurt, Paul, don't get hurt. I have to challenge that fear, because without challenging that fear, I'll succumb to it. And if I succumb to it in a situation where danger suddenly appears and I go, I'm frozen, then I'm dead. That freezing. Now, how do you apply that to your life? You may not be in a life or death situation, but if that fear is such an immobilizer where you go, oh, nothing I can do about it, then what you're doing is you're actually right. When you say there's nothing I can do about it, your subconscious mind listens to the captain, which is that, oh, nothing I can do about it. And your subconscious mind goes, hey, captain says there's nothing we can do about it. Let's give up. All right, everybody, we're not trying anything more. So that our subconscious mind listens to our conscious mind and obeys what you're telling yourself. That's why it's so important to monitor and police the narrative, and to take that moment to say, this is not as bad as it seems, and I've got this. Believe in yourself. Courage comes from the word cœur, which means heart. Believe in thyself. Go in and just say, I believe, I have that courage. I am greater than my circumstances, and you will be. Confidence is the same thing. Courage and confidence goes hand in hand.
For sure. That's so interesting, because you're referring to like the internal captain or the internal leader, the person it's up to you to take control of the situation. And I feel like you're a very strong example of that. And I mean, not to get too personal about it, but it makes me think about, because of your childhood, because of the situations with the teacher or the father and all those situations, you had to learn that life or death, it's me, and I have to make that choice. That's what it seems like as you're talking about this now. I'm also thinking about your whole timeline, your whole thing. It's very. I just really see like a full life in your teaching. You know what I mean?
Thank you. Yeah, what I like to do is I'm a collector. I'm a collector of experiences, and I like to analyze those experiences and take control of my thoughts, my beliefs, my actions. And I just absolutely love it. And I try so many different things, as you know. I've published 3 books so far. I'm actually working on my 4th one. I've got a television series, a script done, which I'm getting ready to pitch to Netflix. I've got so many things that I try, because at the end of my life, my friend, I do not want to be visited by the ghosts of missed opportunities who go, hey, Paul, you know that girl you wanted to ask out and you didn't have the guts to? Oh, let me show you what that would have turned out like. Or remember that job that you thought you were unqualified for, you never tried for it, or that opportunity of writing that book, writing that film script, doing this and doing that. Poor Paul, man, you poor individual. You missed all these great opportunities and you didn't bring these opportunities to life. I don't want to be visited by those spirits, man. I want to be visited by the spirits of rock and roll who say, oh, man, dude, what a ride. Woo, let's do that over again. That was fun.
You burned the guitar and you smashed it. You left everything on the stage.
That's
it.
You're
an icon.
That's
awesome, man. Now I know you have all these different interests, and I want to talk about the books. You have 3 books written with a 4th on the way. Is that correct?
That is correct.
If you had to pick like your favorite, I know you can't pick like your favorite kid or whatever, but because books, people say it's like, oh, it's like my kids, I can't choose. What's a book that you find yourself talking the most about, that you're most excited about, that you've written of the 3?
It is my very first one. And I'll tell you, here's the thing. I didn't set out to write a book. That was not in my plans. I would tell people stories because I'm a storyteller and I'm a good storyteller. I would say, oh yeah, and I was on this 747 and I talked to terrorists off the 747, in Paris, France. Well, and people, what? My life was saved by a terrorist. I was about to be killed and the terrorist saved my life. What? And they're saying, Paul, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want to write a book. Here's the thing about whispers. When we get a whisper, it can come from somebody else who says, you ought to try this and you'd be very good at this. That's a whisper. Then we get the whispers in our minds that come to us and they say, write the book. Write the book. I found myself having told people I have no interest in writing a book. And I was in between jobs. And, I was acting and I was in between jobs that were paying money because sometimes, as you know, as a struggling actor, you're not making that much money. So I'm sitting there going, what am I going to do? Like, I don't like to not do something. I got to do something. And all of a sudden this little whisper comes in and goes, write the darn book. And I'm thinking, wait, write the book. How do you do that? How do you do that? And I thought, how do I write a book? Okay, I hear you. Wherever you're coming from, I hear you. I acknowledge you. I feel your presence. How do I do it? So I went to a bookstore and I picked up a book on how to write a book. So I got back home and I read about 40 pages of it. And I thought I knew it all. And I started to write. As it turns out, I didn't know it quite all. However, it took me 2 years to bring this book to life. And I was proud when it was done. I really challenged myself when it was done or during the process. And then I thought, let's self-publish, because a publisher is so hard to find. Like a big publishing company, they get millions of submissions all the time. I've been told in Canada, it's so difficult to find a great publisher and the one that will take you. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to self-publish. I self-published it under the title of Hostage to Myself, using the principles that I spoke of, how we hostage ourselves to those self-sabotaging thoughts. That's the whole concept of my first book. And so I self-published it. I might have sold about 40 copies out there. And as the universe would have it, an editorial director for HarperCollins Canada came across my book on a website that I'd been featured on for public speaking. And he read my bio and he said, wow, this guy is pretty interesting. I wonder if he wrote a book. He sees that I wrote a book. He orders it. Then he gets a hold of me through LinkedIn and he says, I'd love to have coffee with you. And I see, ooh, here's a guy. Oh, HarperCollins Canada? Yeah, of course. And so I went. And on my birthday in 2018, we met for coffee and he pulls out my book and he says, we want to publish this book globally.
Wow.
And I said, yes, you do. Yes,
wow.
you do. And so they published it under the title Take Control of Your Life.
Yep.
And that was my first baby. And what that book is doing for people, Will, is that it's saving people's lives. I've had letters and emails from my readers who have said, your book has changed my life. I was going to kill myself. I read your book. I'm not going to.
Yeah.
You've given me hope. One homeless man, he emailed me and said, because of your book, I am no longer homeless and I have a job. And in fact, I've kept in touch with this guy, and he's starting his own business. Go figure that. He credits Take Control of Your Life for having placed him on this path, and so many others. So that's my first. That is my baby.
Oh, wow. And then Take Control of Your Life. That's a mix of, it's a mix of your stories as well as sort of like what you learned from your experiences and how we can use them and all that. And it's interesting that, yeah, you talk about us taking ourselves hostage. Did you find after all those traumatic experiences, let's say in the Mideast, because you talked about that in your TED Talk, the Mideast and, almost being killed, escaping death and all this stuff. Did you find you left this war zone a bit of a hostage to yourself, even if at that point?
I did suffer a little bit of post-traumatic stress. And I'll tell you what, it was in this respect. Every time Firecracker Day came and I started to hear firecrackers going off, I would jump behind a car thinking that I was under attack. That was the only kind of post-traumatic stress that I experienced to my knowledge. Yeah. I'm able to handle a lot of things, but whenever I hear firecrackers or a loud shot, or whatever, backfire, I'm still what because I'm ready to pounce into action, because I run towards it as opposed to away from it. Like I try to assess a situation and do what I can. But no, I'm very fortunate that these experiences have not kept me hostage to them. Very well put, Will. You're using, the ideas that I absolutely love to use is that, no, we are in control of our hostage takers. They're not in control of us. If they try to grab us hostage and say, you can't, it's our job to do the work and say, you're wrong. And I'll give these hostage takers a name every once in a while. So if any one of your listeners, of all you people who are listening in, if you have those hostage takers coming to tell you that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy enough, that you can't possibly ask for this or ask for that, give your hostage takers a name. Call them idiot, or, I might call mine Bob. Hey, Bob, get the heck out of my mind. I don't want you here. I don't need you here. You're not welcome here. You see, I am the landlord of my own thoughts, and I get to choose the tenants that take residency in my mind. They don't get to choose me. I have the contract in my hand, and I can either sign them in or I can sign them out. Nobody's coming to rescue you. You got to do some work, but you can take control of your thoughts. You can change your narrative, and you can find someone to help support you. And maybe that's a coach, maybe that's a counselor, maybe that's a therapist or trusted friend. You don't have to do it alone. You can. I have good friends that I go to and I share my thoughts and feelings with, and I'm vulnerable. And vulnerability is such a beautiful thing. A lot of people associate vulnerability to dark instances of shame and guilt and regret and sorrow and hurt because they're living in that past. They're living in that past, Will, and that's not where they deserve to live. You don't deserve to live there. You can take control of your thoughts and you can create this moment, this new moment of empowerment. And so that's why being vulnerable and sharing is actually a gateway. It's a gateway to love and connection and friendship and hope. That's what it is all about. It's about sharing our experiences with people and having people share theirs with us so that we can help each other. Leonard Cohen, he a great Canadian singer-songwriter. He wrote Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. You remember him?
Yeah.
Well, he wrote a song back in the 1990s called Anthem. And in this song, this is what he said. He says, there's a crack in everything, but that's how the light gets through. And when we think about that lyric, there's a crack in everything, but that's how the light gets through. We've each suffered our cracks, and some of us have suffered more. However, we have a light inside of us, and we can also let the light of others come inside of us. And so we can share our light while others share their light with us, because we're meant to share. We're meant to support one another. We weren't born into the matrix, into pods. We were born into families. We were born into communities. And this is what we need to remind ourselves of when the going gets tough, is that I can turn around to you. Imagine you and me on a boat, and we're pulling the oar. You're sitting beside me, Will. Yeah. And one day it's so rough. One day it's so hard for me. And I look at you and I go to Will, I can't do it today. I can't go on today. And you're going to be right beside me. You're going to say, Paul, I got you today. I got you. I'm going to pull your oar today. I'm going to help you. We're going to get you strong again. And then you're going to help me in this instant, in this moment, in this experience. And then next week, if you happen to be tired, exhausted, and in need of support and help, you're going to turn around to me and say, Paul, I need you, brother. And I'll say, yes, you do. I'm here for you. And that's what life is all about. It's all about this connection and helping one another.
That's beautiful, man. I definitely relate. I definitely very grateful for the oars, not the oars, for the rowers in my life.
Yes.
Without them, you know, they say you are like the average of the 5 people you kind of hang out with most. And so, yeah, it's really important, I think, the people we have around and that we give back to them as well. Hey, I just want to take this time to say, if you're enjoying this conversation with my guest and you want to learn more, you can check out jpaulnadeau.com. That's his website. You can find links to his books there. And check out Inspire Us. That's his podcast. InspireUs.ca is where you can find it. Now you can find the rest of this conversation right now. So we've been going for a little while. I won't take too much more of your time, but I was hoping if I could selfishly ask this question about, you alluded to something about a terrorist on a plane, and it kind of skimmed by in the conversation. And I was like, what is that story? That sounds so cool. Like, I don't know. Like, what is that?
Yeah. Pardon me.
If you're comfortable, if you're cool to say it. If you're...
You know what? I think I may have even alluded to that story in one of my books. I'm not sure, but here it is. Again, I like the Forrest Gump, what's, stupid is what stupid does and all that kind of life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So I'm in Paris, France in 2005. On my way back to Jordan, I had come to Canada to visit, and I'm sitting on a plane, and it's a hot July. I think it was July, really, really hot. And we're sitting in the plane, still on the tarmac, and it's like 45-minute delay, and people are getting anxious and they're getting ugly. And the stewardesses, nobody was able to give us any answers. And so I'm in the aisle seat because I do not like to be in the window seat. If something happens, I want to be in the aisle seat. It's always been that way. Once a cop, always a cop. Back to the wall. So I'm sitting there, and the fellow beside me is looking outside the window. So I look outside the window, and I see something you generally don't want to see around a plane that's about to take off or one that's landing. I see all these emergency vehicles, these SWAT vehicles surround the plane, and these armed police officers getting off. And I'm thinking, okay, there's a 45-minute delay. I'm going to guess there's something not quite right in this cabin or in this plane. And sure enough, a few moments later, the door swings open. The captain comes out, and he's surrounded by these police officers who got their guns out. And the captain starts shouting at this passenger. And I could hear in he's a French captain. You threatened to blow up the plane, that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, holy geez, you don't want to hear that. Threaten to blow up the plane. Like this, a bomb on a plane. That's not what you want to hear. And of course, the atmosphere in that plane went from one of anger to one of terror. A lot of people felt that there had been a legitimate threat made to us before the plane took off to blow it up.
Wow.
And yes. And so how legitimate it was, I don't know. It was made. The threat was made, obviously, because the captain was there trying to negotiate with this passenger, and armed, police officers are pointing guns at him. And I'm thinking, this is not going well. The captain did not know how to handle the situation. He handled a volatile situation with anger and pointing his finger.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do that. It's not the way you negotiate with someone. Imagine negotiating with a loved one and you're pointing the finger and accusing them and yelling and screaming. How much cooperation are you going to get? If there is a bomb, it's going to go off. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is bad. And I'm looking, and I'm looking for a second terrorist, because I thought it was a terrorist attack. And so I'm looking for the second person who might be smiling while everybody else is white knuckling it. And so I didn't see anyone. And I drew my attention over to the captain, who was surrounded by these armed officers. And I slowly raised my hand, very, very slowly, to get his attention. Didn't want to startle him. If I jumped up, I could get shot, right? You never know. Mm-hmm. So I slowly raised my hand, and I identified myself to the captain in French and told him that I was a hostage negotiator and that I would be happy to take over the negotiation for him. And you know what? He looked at me. He nodded his head yes. And you could almost feel his happy dance, because he no longer had that responsibility. So I went and I asked the person sitting next to the suspect to give up their chair, which they really happily did. And I was able to get everybody moved away. And I sat with this, I don't think he was a terrorist. I think he was just an angry man, but he had made a terrorist threat. And I spoke to him, and I was able to get him into custody off the plane in 45 minutes. The plane was checked for bombs. There were no bombs. We had to take another flight, but everything worked out.
Wow. So it's like, how do you connect to him? Is it tactical, or is it real, true empathy? And I don't mean that in a cynical way. I'm just curious, because it's like, was it true empathy? Did you feel for him, or was it a tactic to just say, I'm going to pretend to understand and open up to him? Or
I can't use pretend.
Yeah.
I can't use pretend, because pretend is going to get seen. If you pretend something, you're going to give yourself away through one of three channels of communication: your body language, your tone of voice, or the words that you say. Micro expressions. We have micro expressions and a bunch of things going on. See, our primitive brain, our reptilian brain, is always looking for the lies, the deception, the danger, and it's making these. This is why we get these gut feelings about people that something's not right. Usually your gut is right, because you don't know how all those messages are being interpreted by your brain and by your logical self and everything else. So be genuine. You must be genuine in working in the moment to say, how can I help you? What is going on? And in most crisis hostage negotiations, start out, hi, my name is Paul. I'm the negotiator today. How can I help you? How can I help you? Tell me what's going on. What are you experiencing? And then tell me all about it. You really want to be in the moment, in the present moment, getting as much information as you possibly can, and allowing the person that you're negotiating with, and this could be in your own family circles or in a business circle, give them an opportunity to explain what it is that they're challenged with, or what it is that brought them to this particular moment, and how you might be able to help them through this moment, that they might want to share their experiences with you, and therefore give you some of the control of what they have. And so be genuinely interested in solving a problem. And that is, like, what got you here? What is it that brought you to this moment? How can we resolve this? How can we get this to work, for both of us here? And, what is your greatest fear? A lot of times when I was negotiating with a hostage taker, that's one of the questions that I would always, what's your greatest fear? And in most situations, they would say, I'm afraid that once I step out of here, I'm going to get killed. One of your snipers is going to kill me. And so then you have to deal with that because that is their reality or their fear in the moment. And so you have to make sure that you bring them to a place of understanding, that you're there to see it through to the end, and that you have their interest in mind as well as everybody else's interest.
That's awesome. That's a very compassionate.
That's a big key right there.
Yeah. Super compassionate view of humanity. And it's awesome that you're saying it's true. It doesn't. So would you say that you don't believe, for example, that there's maybe inherent evil or anything like of this nature? Like some people talk about psychopathy and some people don't change and this, that, and the other. Like, what's your view? Do you think there's such a thing? I mean, I know psychopathy exists, but do you think there's evil?
I do believe that some people are without feeling and without remorse and all that. But I believe that the majority of people are good, and that whatever circumstances led them to be where they are, for example, a criminal becoming a criminal because of their circumstances or whatever lured them in. And sometimes it's just a feeling of being wanted and accepted or, you know, whatever it is, but they become good at it because that's gives them recognition, whatever. Mm-hmm. Let's take this idea of the criminal. And I have a lot of criminals who have actually become friends because of the way that I treated them. So if I went in when I was a detective and a polygraph examiner, if I went in to interview and interrogate a murderer, for example, my mindset was this, and this is why I was so successful in it. And a lot of my fellow officers would say, Paul, how do you do it? I said, well, this is how I do it. Pretty simple. I'm not walking in to talk to a murderer. I'm walking in to talk to a human being who has been accused of a murder. So let's take the action away from the individual. So if somebody has hurt you and you go to talk to the person who's hurt you, you're on the wrong track, because your back is going to be up, your defenses are going to be up, something's going to happen, and you're going to look at the action and say, well, you hurt me. You know, you hurt me. That's not going to get you anywhere. So don't look at the action or what the transgression that they've done against you. Look at the human being and connect with the human being. So let's go back to the murderer. I'd walk in, having left what they've done at the side, and I would get to connect with them. Show them a little bit of myself, that little bit of vulnerability. This is who I am. I want to get to know you, like you, and trust you. I'm here to treat you with the dignity and respect. Who are you? Tell me more about you, because I don't know anything about you other than what I've read on a report or what I've heard that people say. But I don't know who you are. So, John, who are you? Let's talk a bit, you know? And so you'd make that connection, that rapport, you'd build that bond. And it's amazing how easily you can do it if you're genuinely interested in making the connection. And at some point, they're going to get to know you, like you, and trust you in a very short order. And then when that happens, you can then bring the action of what has been done back to the table and say, John, you're not that evil person or that monster that people are making you out to be. What I have experienced here, you're a pretty damn good guy, you know? But there is this thing. And you know what, John, I know you did it. Yeah, Paul, I did. It's amazing how once somebody opens the gate to their heart with you, you can ask for just about anything. And this is in an ask, in a negotiation, conflict resolution, whatever. You connect with that human being who are more similar to you than they are different. They just want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be appreciated and validated. All of us want to be loved, whatever it is. When we feel that we're getting that from someone, it's like, I'm going to give you this in return. It's that theory of reciprocation, what I spoke of at the very beginning of our talk.
Dude, that is amazing. I've really enjoyed this talk. We're pretty much at the hour. I feel like I would love to have you back sometime, because I feel like there's a million stories. I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure being on your show, my friend.
Yeah, Paul, where can people find more about you? Where should people go to find out more?
Pretty easy to find out more about me. Type my name into Google, and there's all kinds of stuff that comes out from the things that I've done. I have two websites, Paul Nadeau. So just a J in front of my name, paulnadeau.com. And also I have a podcast called inspireus.ca. So if you go to www.jpaulnadeau, you get my personal website and my books and that kind of stuff. If you go to www.inspireus.ca, you get my podcast information, the wonderful guests I've had on my show, and you're going to get some inspiration. That's what you're going to get.
Nice, man. Well, thank you so much, Jude, and all the best.
Yes, sir. Thank you.